Hello, in this thrilling final episode of the present series of our video pods, we've got all the Europa League answers you've been waiting for. From the semi-finals, team from Bosphorus, beaten at Benfica. Team from not the Bosphorus, win against Basel. We review the semis and ask what will happen when these joint contenders roll up in Amsterdam. All of that in today's Football Weekly Very Extra. Right, off we go then. Owen Gibson. Good morning, welcome.
Thank you.
Good. Barry Glendenning.
Hello. Excellent.
Good to have you on board. Philippe Auclair.
Hello.
Delighted to see you too. Chelsea, Benfica, that's our Europa League final. Happy now, Barry?
I'm absolutely delighted. I think it's a bit weird. I'm not entirely comfortable with the fact that two teams who dropped out of the Champions League are going to be contesting the Europa League final. I think it's kind of a necessity that that's the way the competition has gone, but I'm not hugely comfortable with it.
You'd rather have seen a plucky trial like a Basel in there?
Yeah.
Right. Well, they had an impressive first half, didn't they? After
they had a bit of a go, but we were just saying it felt like they never quite felt like they believed they could do it, you know. But they did. But the first half they looked impressive, and then once they got the goal, but they never seemed to capitalise on that, you know, kind of that. And Chelsea obviously blitzed them in that 10-minute spell, but
certainly did. Philippe?
In many ways, the most stunning thing about yesterday's game was the fact that it seems to have been the first time in a long time that the fans have had such a go at Rafa Benítez. On the night that he took them to a European final, giving the club a chance to be, I think, only the fourth club to do the Grand Slam, full house of trophies in Europe, which has never been done before.
I don't know if they were having a go at him in particular. It felt more like a sort of end of term feel. I sort of thought, you know, kind of they knew they would be rid of him soon, and there was kind of, you know, giddiness at the possibility of Jose arriving, and kind of, you know. But I can understand why if you're Benitez, you feel slightly peaked, you know.
It's all because of the Mourinho interview the other day, then, is it?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, and the latest on that is there's an exclusive on the back page of one of the papers.
Well, the front and back of the Sun.
Yeah,
so it's world exclusive. They'll be back on July the 1st.
July the 1st, right.
Is it conceivable that a lot of Chelsea fans have forgotten how sterile some of the football they played under Jose Mourinho is?
Conceivable, yeah. And it's also, it feels to me a bit like one of those things where, you know, a great band gets back together and they're desperately hoping it'll recapture the magic of the first time, that, you know, particularly those first two championship winning years, and they've forgotten that later period where, you know, albums 3 and 4 were a bit tedious and not quite.
Has it never worked, a band reunion? Has that never worked?
Well, Suede were sitting on these very chairs 2 days ago.
Reasonably triumphant, weren't they?
Yeah, that's yeah, I'd say their reformation has been an unequivocal success.
All right,
The Zombies.
The Zombies. There you go. There's another one.
Philippe plays a bit of music. Have you ever broken up and reformed?
Yes, several times.
Yeah. How's that gone for you?
Pretty well, thank you.
Right. Good. Anything but sterile, of course, this performance from Chelsea, especially with that David Luiz goal.
Yes. Especially, well, what is remarkable is the way that Rafa Benítez has done something that many people thought possible, which is to deploy David Luiz in midfield, a position from which he's improved immensely this season. And it's a spectacular strike, but more than that is the way that his game has evolved over the year has been terrific. And again, thanks to Rafa Benítez.
Well, we've been talking for a long time, haven't we, about, you know, who the next character's going to be in the Chelsea squad, how they're going to replace that Terry Lampard generation. You can start to see Luiz as one of those who'll do that. You know, those goals he's scored recently have been amazing, and he seems like a real sort of obviously character and leader in the dressing room. He's emerging as anyway.
There has been talk over the last couple of days of suddenly there being a new deal on the table for Frank Lampard, and that might be a little bit of Mourinho behind the scenes wheeler dealing, so that he can do his first press conference and say, I give you Frank Lampard.
I think that's exactly like that. Will he come back from behind a curtain?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's probably right. I mean, he'd obviously Lampard would be a friend in the dressing room, wouldn't he? He'd obviously like that continuity from the last time he was there. It would make entirely good sense. And even from a PR point of view, I've always thought it's madness for Chelsea not to offer him at least a 1-year deal on a reduced salary. Why would you not, in terms of the sort of the view of the fans, I think?
Absolutely.
He's had one of his best seasons for Chelsea for a very, very, very long time. But again, also because he's been used extremely cleverly by Rafa Benítez, who seems to have picked exactly the right games for him almost all of the time.
The question of David Luiz playing in midfield, though, is that the third game in the row that he's taken up that position?
Yeah, he sort of tried him there early on, didn't he? And then seemed to go back on it and try and put him back into defence. And then recently he seems to have played really well there.
Yeah, it's all about rotation of his squad. He has a very limited number of midfielders, which is the one area probably Chelsea will have to look at. I mean, of course, you know, the injury to Oriol Romeu didn't help, but they have very limited options in that. So it's just Benitez' clever rotation of the two sitting in front of the back four.
All right, because clever people who draw diagrams and that suggest that it's that it's, well, not him in this case, suggests that Luis in midfield is an accident waiting to happen.
Well, I think Luis has matured a huge amount as a player since Benitez took over. Another thing to give Benitez credit for, I think. And I don't understand, why would he be an accident waiting to happen?
Because he's not tactically disciplined enough, because he'll give the ball away too much. You might say that if he provides goals like that, you can put up with the odd mistake or two.
Yeah.
That he would be dominated by, your professional midfielders.
I saw him.
I don't necessarily
have this
agree.
Impression at all. I don't know. I don't have this impression that he was an accident.
But
waiting
clearly,
to happen.
if the people who draw diagrams are smarter than I am, so
bow to those people who draw diagrams,
bow to their superior tactical savvy.
Right, well, whatever. It is a tough period that awaits Chelsea now. 5 games in 14 days, Owen. You've got starting with Man United. Then, of course, there's Spurs. I've got the list here. Then Villa, Benfica in Amsterdam, and finishing off at home to Everton. Woo!
It's it's felt like it suited them over this period with a lot of games in a way, and that they kind of, they've cast that's all the sort of heavy labouring that they were going through earlier in the year. They seem to have cast off a bit, and the sort of end of the season's in sight. And I think they're playing like a team slightly reborn at the moment. It'll be interesting to see whether that persists till the end of the season. The pressure of trying to secure that top 4 finish, but if they do get a Champions League finish and potentially win the Europa League, then the crazy thing is that Abramovich might sit back and go, well, that whole Rafa Benítez thing, that went really well, didn't it? It worked, it did the job, and
that would be brilliant, wouldn't it?
Well, it'd be
if he kept Rafa after all.
If he kept Rafa,
We should probably mention that there's a bit of a hoo-ha now over the ticket allocation for the final. Both teams only getting 9,800 each.
That's right,
of the 54,000 available.
Which is ludicrous.
Yep.
Presumably that means 30,000 odd tickets will be going to the UEFA family.
Well, they put a lot. They put a lot on sale to quite a lot go on sale to neutrals quite
in
early
Amsterdam?
on in the pro. Yeah, well, in Amsterdam or wherever they put them on general sale.
Right.
But then a big hefty slug goes to the so-called football family, the ever-expanding football family.
Yeah. Well, it's another means for Michel Platini to keep his promise of bringing football back to the fans, isn't it?
Now, meanwhile, over in Portugal, delight as Benfica reached their first European final in 23 years. One newspaper even going with the headline, "Happy finish." Delightful. Delightful. Oscar Cardozo. He's a bit special then, isn't he? 6 goals in the Europa League this season. I think that makes him the top scorer. One ahead of Torres.
I think you're right.
Yep.
Yes.
And he's huge, isn't he? Why isn't there more fuss about him on the transfer front?
There is quite a bit of fuss about him, and there has been for a while, and there's quite a bit of fuss about quite a few players of that Benfica team. I mean, there's him and there's Gaetan, obviously, who's got this huge release clause, I think something like £40 million.
Gaetan.
And one thing which is really striking is, because people will go about Benfica and in the first final for a very long time, also the fact that there's this kind of curse on them in Europe.
Well, yes.
All these finals that they've played and haven't won since.
Well, since 1962, they won with Bela Gutmann the Champions League in 61-62, or European Cup, as it was quaintly known back then. And then he and the club fell out over unpaid wages or a bonus that he was expecting. He walked out, supposedly saying, "Not in 100 years will they win a trophy again without me." And they've been to the final 5 times since then.
So
and
he was Hungarian, wasn't he?
He was Hungarian.
So it's the kind of gypsy
Oh,
curse?
Absolutely, yeah. They're all at it over there. But anyway, so they've made it through to yet another final for what it's worth, and they had a bit of a scare as well, especially late on in the game against Fenerbahce.
It was actually an absolutely terrific game. What was surprising actually was the intensity with which Fenerbahce attacked that, because many people thought after the first leg, they thought 1-0, that's never going to be good enough, and then. Well, it nearly was really, and they had chances until the very end of the game.
It was the Chelsea game in a way, which felt like a foregone conclusion, even though technically it was in the balance. But this one really was in the balance, wasn't it?
Yeah, very much.
Both teams were really going at it.
Absolutely. I mean, terrific spectacle, and also it shows how important this competition is for so-called lesser footballing countries, because Turkey and Portugal just belong to this, I would say, second tier of European football, but they are actually in very good positions, both of them in the European rankings, and that's because they take this competition very seriously indeed. And
well, almost anywhere outside England, it seems to be taken really
well, not France, I can tell you that's a big problem, not Italy either.
And in actual fact, with Benfica reaching the final, they've now moved past Italy in the UEFA coefficients.
Have they, Charles?
They have. They have. Exactly.
What does that mean now?
Well, it means that Italy, in the next draw for the Champions League, which whenever that is later this summer, won't have any seeded teams.
All right.
So it's actually quite an important thing. Doesn't mean that they'll lose any more teams because they'd have to drop below, well, France for that to happen. So Benfica roaring ahead, and they took the lead. Then Fenerbahce got an absolutely ridiculous penalty to come back into it.
Yeah, rather, yes.
But Benfica, they didn't let their heads drop, and 2 goals from Cardozo settled it.
In fairness, that is the final, I must say, perhaps that everybody was hoping for, because the idea of a Chelsea-Fenerbahce final in Amsterdam raised some worries, concerns, I should say, in terms of what could happen around the game as well.
Particularly with
I think there were loads of
fans.
sighs of relief in Nyon and in the UEFA quarters after this result.
All right. Okay, well, what prospects are there for Chelsea and Benfica? They met in the Champions League last year. Chelsea winning both games. Owen.
Yes, you'd probably expect Chelsea to win. They'd have to be favourites, wouldn't they? But I think it'd be a good game.
You could wonder, is it the game too far?
When will be the game too far, or
There'll be one.
in fact will the lure of actually winning a trophy? I mean, some of those Chelsea players, particularly some of those who missed out through suspension on Champions League final last year, will obviously want to play and want to finish the season with a trophy after what's been a pretty
John
difficult
Terry,
season.
for example.
Indeed, yeah.
Well, is the jig up for John Terry? I mean, was he dropped last night so they could rest him for the weekend, or was he dropped because Benitez doesn't reckon he's up to it anymore? How far down the pecking order is he in centre halves? I don't know.
He's number 4.
Yeah.
Behind Luis Ivanovic Cahill. Now the problem for Terry is that Azpilicueta has really imposed himself at right back, which means Ivanovic can go his normal natural position in the centre. So Ivanovic, Luis, you'd say yes, number 1 pairing, then Gary Cahill, then John Terry.
Very
There's
good.
a couple of Chelsea or Benfica old boys in the Chelsea ranks, of course. David Luiz and Ramirez both came from Benfica.
Yep. So it'll be a special occasion for them.
Very.
Playing against their old club. Very good.
Will they celebrate if they score? Sorry.
That's a very good question. One that we'll no doubt be asking in the build-up to the big game, which is on Wednesday the 15th
yes.
of May.
Yeah.
Very good. Excellent. That, though, is it for today's Football Weekly Very Extra. So many thanks to Philippe, Owen and Barry for being with us. We will be back on Monday with Football Weekly Classic Edition. So have a super weekend, and we'll see you then.